You being so reclusive as a daughter-in-law is truly shameful. Get out of here. My mother-in-law, who is a guest in our house, makes fun of me for being a freeloader every day. She just eats and sleeps. Isn't she much more of a freeloader than I am? Who should really be the one leaving? Look out, mother-in-law. I'm going to destroy your spirit. My name is Kelly. Recently, I've gotten hooked on potato chips while watching TV. I kept munching on them, and now, at the age of 39, I've got this extra weight around my waist. I've barely moved and eaten way too many calories. Yikes. This happened about 2 years ago. My job now lets me work remotely. Normally, I would be thrilled, thinking, yay, no commute means I can sleep in. But how long are you going to stay home? Shouldn't you start getting ready for work? My mother-in-law keeps scolding me for using my saved commute time to relax with coffee. It's not exactly living together. She's just freeloading without asking. As the world faced the pandemic and a year had passed since my husband and I stopped visiting his parents' house, suddenly my mother-in-law appeared at our home with a large suitcase. Is my son well? I want to be with my grandchild, so I'm moving in today. Of course, both my husband and I were against it. We have a 5-year-old daughter, and we stopped visiting to protect her from infection. Honestly, I disliked the visit from my mother-in-law, who came from a more urban area than our home. Essentially, my father-in-law was left behind at their home. I feel sorry for my father-in-law, and living with my mother-in-law is especially bothersome. There's not a single benefit, so I want her to go back. I tried to make these complaints sound nicer and told her, but she just ignored us completely. She wasn't interested in peering us out. No matter how many times we say we want you to go back, she responds with, "You're cold to the elderly," or "Young people nowadays don't care about their parents," and somehow we end up being lectured, and she stays without permission. Is it because we're weak that she pushes her way in? No, there are people in the world who don't listen and are very assertive. In fact, on the first day my mother-in-law moved in, a huge argument broke out. Instead of going home, she tried to barricade herself on the second floor of our house. When I blocked the door to prevent her from entering the room, she threw a tantrum, causing our child to cry in fright. It was terrible. Exhausted from work and childcare, my husband, and I didn't have the energy to stand up to such a monster like her. Thus, we were forced into living with this terrible mother-in-law. While I sipped coffee, glaring at me, I said, "I told you yesterday I'm working from home now." I had to explain to my mother-in-law again that my work form had changed. COVID has spread within the company, so we've introduced remote work. I don't have to go to the office. You're lying. There's no way you can work from home, saying that my mother-in-law snorted. Remote work is increasing now, you know. Even the news says that train users have decreased due to remote work. Haven't you seen it? I know that, but you are working for a construction company, right? How can someone in construction work from home? I'm in the admin department. As long as I have a computer, I can communicate with my team. Whatever, you're lying. You shouldn't underestimate the elderly. You might think we don't understand computers, but I know all about them. I know well enough that such a convenient job doesn't exist. Here we go again. My mother-in-law insists that what she believes is correct. No matter how much truth I tell her, she refuses to listen to anything else. She is a master of preaching to justify herself and eventually exhaust those she lectures. Not wanting to be tired before work, I just nod and agree with whatever she preaches. However, the problem is not solved. As expected, the next day and the day after, my mother-in-law began to gradually call me a freeloader. As I continued to work from home, she hurled abuse like this constantly. By the way, I do take care of the house properly. I make breakfast for my mother-in-law, clean the house, and do the shopping. All of it is done by me. Oh, and of course, some of it is shared with my husband. Ironically, the real eat and sleep freeloader who does nothing but eat the meals I prepare, devour the snacks I buy, and lounge around at home is my mother-in-law. She criticizes freely while ignoring her own behavior. After being called a freeloader almost every day, I complained to my husband, and he, almost pleadingly, continued to ask her, "Please go back to your place." One day, while I was in my room having an online meeting with my superiors, suddenly my mother-in-law burst in. "Hey, we're out of sweets." I was dumbfounded and speechless at her red-faced shouting. However, without any regard, she shouted again, "Go buy some now." I quickly turned off the microphone I was using for the meeting and told her, "I'm in a meeting," to which she replied, "You're just pretending to work." "What kind of meeting is that?" "You're just a recluse." "We're out of snacks. Stop complaining and go buy some." And for breakfast today, I was in the mood for pancakes, but we've had bread for 2 days in a row. Why can't you be more attentive? You're really stupid. All of these are things she could do herself, especially since she hasn't contributed a penny to living expenses since she started freeloading. To be frank, I pay a mortgage of $1,800 a month for this house, which is in my name. Right after we decided to buy a house upon getting married, my husband was faced with an unreasonable transfer. When he declined, he was threatened with a demotion, so he made the tough decision to quit. At the time, I was working at a larger construction company and had the financial flexibility, so I took out the mortgage in my name. Now my husband contributes to the living expenses, and we split everything as a couple. There's no way I'm the freeloader my mother-in-law claims I am. That day, after my mother-in-law stubbornly tried to make me go buy sweets and was too persistent, I locked her out of the room. She lost her temper and repeatedly banged on the door. Although I returned to the meeting, I couldn't concentrate, and my work for that day was a disaster. When I told my husband about this, he, usually careful with his words in front of the children, uncharacteristically cursed and yelled at her. Enough is enough. It seems that he, too, had reached his limit with his own mother. After all, my mother-in-law does care for her only son. My husband and her way, she's assertive with the attitude of "I am the parent here," but when my husband truly loses his temper, she's weak. If my husband could really control his anger, maybe then my mother-in-law would have left our house. Being a gentle person, he rarely does that. After being forcefully dragged to the front door by such a husband, my mother-in-law quieted down a bit. Since then, wait, did we not kick her out? My husband physically threw her out the door, but she violently forced her way back into the house. My husband and I tried to keep her out, resulting in us getting several bruises on our arms and legs. It seems my mother-in-law intends not to move an inch from here without a lever. She hates being told what to do by others, so even if we kick her out, she'll probably just come back. If only there was a way to truly break her stubborn spirit. We had no idea how to deal with such a monster. Though my mother-in-law had been quiet for a while, one day she started this. I met a neighbor during my walk today. Her wife apparently works from home at 2, but she goes to the office. Your story is obviously nonsense. My mother-in-law came to where I was working to basically say, "See, I was right," with a smug look. I couldn't help but stop my work. "I thought it was strange that you're always at home." What are you talking about? Besides, I'm actually working right now." Enough with those lies. I heard from the neighbors that it's not just remote work. Every day you have days when you go into the office too, she insisted. "Oh, well, that depends on the company's policies. My company has made it possible to work fully remotely, so I chose to stay home since we have a child. I tried to cover up. Now that you've been caught lying, it's so childish. No, really, it depends on the company. I'm embarrassed by you. When I say my daughter-in-law never leaves the house, people are shocked. They ask if such remote work even exists, as it's different from their situation. I think they're just surprised that there are various ways to work. I explained, but to my mother-in-law, it sounds like remote work like that can't possibly exist. Your daughter-in-law must be a recluse, she laughed triumphantly with a loud ha. Since my mother-in-law's nitpicking seemed likely to continue, I politely and carefully asked her to leave so I could focus on my work, but it was in vain. You're just playing around. Why don't you listen to people? I'm saying this for your sake, she snapped back. I was polite to avoid provoking her, but the result was the same. I wonder what I should have done, but right now I really need to prioritize my work. I'm in the middle of rushing to build a program for work. The completion is near, and I don't have time to deal with my mother-in-law. Basically, this cohabitation is your fault because you guys don't visit your parents' house. Are you even reflecting on this? Her nonsensical ranting intensified. Finally, she said, "Listen to people," and forcibly took my laptop and turned it off. Though I frequently saved my work, about an hour's worth of work was lost. Really, a freeloader daughter-in-law is a disgrace. You're just mooching off this house. Get out. Saying that my mother-in-law threw the computer at me. Fortunately, it didn't hit me, but the monitor was broken. It was lucky it wasn't a company laptop, but my personal one. But that's hardly a silver lining. Why do I have to be called a freeloader by my mother-in-law, who barges in and does as she pleases? And have my work interrupted and be forced to buy a new computer? Despite repeatedly telling her to leave, she doesn't listen, and no one welcomes her. The genuine freeloader who doesn't do any housework and just eats and sleeps. Is she really so great? Anger is boiling up inside me. Is this what it means to reach the end of your patience? Something snapped inside me. From that day on, I decided not to argue with my mother-in-law since I don't have a computer. I have to go into the office. Reducing contact with my mother-in-law allows me to endure it somewhat. Finally started working. Various other sarcastic remarks were made, but I just brushed them off with a yes, yes. After hearing about the whole situation from me, my husband completely lost his temper and was adamant about kicking her out. At this point, just kicking her out wouldn't satisfy me. Luckily, I just needed to endure a little longer until my mother-in-law goes on a trip with an old friend. During that time, I'll definitely give her a taste of her own medicine. A week later, unaware of my schemes, my mother-in-law's voice echoed from the entrance. I'm home. She seemed to be in a good mood as she returned from her trip and came upstairs. Oh, what? What happened? She was frantically fiddling with a doorknob. Welcome back, mother-in-law. Why are you in my room? Since I'm a freeloader, I thought I'd shut myself away in your room. What? Yes, I had taken over the room my mother-in-law was using after she went on her trip. Stop joking and unlock this door. You're ruining the good mood I got from my trip. Get out of my room. Why? This is my house. What? I own this house. There was never a room for you here. Enough with your excuses. I've been using it for years, so it's my room. I never agreed to live together in the first place. You know I've kicked you out several times. Your current situation is more like trespassing, isn't it? Just get out. Enraged by my response, my mother-in-law kicked the door, but I still didn't open it. Grandma, you have to take care of things. I heard my daughter's perfectly sensible voice from beyond the door. It seems my husband was also there, advising her. Don't turn out like Grandma. Why do I have to be made a fool of? Her anger intensified. It's over, Mom. You have 3 choices. Leave now, think it over and then leave, or leave, and never come back. I had no choice but to leave, despite being infuriated by my husband's words. Our daughter chimed in, perhaps understanding the situation or not, with a giggling leave. It seemed to affect my mother-in-law, whose voice then became frail. What? Haven't I been good to you all? On the contrary, we have been extremely patient and kind because we are your family. But you've trampled all over that. What? You didn't come visit us at our house at all. There's a pandemic going on. It wasn't the time for visits. Mom, you only think about yourself. My husband's sound criticism made my mother-in-law raise her voice again, insisting I did nothing wrong. This is getting us nowhere, I said to my mother-in-law. Fine, mother-in-law, I'll open the door. Perhaps something in my tone gave her pause. She showed a look of mistrust and seemed at a loss for words. However, I didn't wait for her to respond and opened the door. The moment I did, my mother-in-law was shocked by what she saw inside. No. Why? Where is John? Where did John go? I threw him out with the trash the day before yesterday. How could you do that? I'll show you. My mother-in-law lunged at me in a frenzy, but I dodged smoothly. Jong, the name she cried out, was her favorite handsome Korean idol. The reason for her trip was also because she wanted to stay at an inn where Jong supposedly visited incognito with his fans. She had been attending events he participated in whenever he came to the U.S. and had collected CDs, limited edition merchandise, and more. When she arrived at our house from her in-laws' home, 80% of the contents in her suitcase were Jong goods. She's a hardcore fan. Upon her arrival, she had adorned the walls of the room with his posters, and several framed photos were lined up on the shelves. But now, all of that was. Why is everything Backstreet Boys now? Indeed, as she tearfully noted, all her favorite Jong items had been replaced with posters and goods of Backstreet Boys. They were up for auction, to which she angrily said, "That's not the point. Oh, even the curtains have changed. Those girly pink lace curtains didn't suit your lack of charm, so I replaced them with green ones. Hey, where did that bear rock go? Why is it a mountain design now? Oh no, and Mickey Mouse too. What's this? Homer Simpson. I just tried to make it age appropriate. What? Did you really throw away everything here, including Joe?" Saying this, my mother-in-law, looking pale, shook my shoulder. As you can see, I smiled. My mother-in-law looked up at the sky for a while, surveyed the room, stared at the walls, and then with her mouth agape, she crumpled to her knees. It seemed she was really shocked more than I had imagined. "Look, mother-in-law, each of those Backstreet Boys posters I bought at auction cost about $30, including shipping. Do you think that's cheap? But look, try counting how many there are. You can't see it because of the carpet, but I've covered the floor too. And look at this mountain rock. The design is by a famous artist, and it's actually hand-woven. How much do you think it costs? Plus, I paid an unknown amount on a flea market app for this Homer stuffed toy. It was so expensive I don't know the market value, but I bought it at a price set arbitrarily by the seller." My mother-in-law, listening to me go on, asked, "What are you trying to say?" "Well, I expected that if I were really a freeloader, I wouldn't have the money to buy all this, right? The fact that I can do such frivolous things shows that I usually earn my keep. So what? I've had enough." Deflated by the loss of her Joe items, my mother-in-law didn't even argue back. "It's no fun if you just keep quiet. How about this, then? What? As I quietly opened the dresser, my mother-in-law froze again upon seeing what I held in my hand. My clothes. From tomorrow, you'll be wearing only these fashionable pants and this t-shirt. I showed her the pants and a white t-shirt that had only the word freeloader written on it. What is it? There's a Joe event next week. I can't be stylish now. Why don't you go in the pants? It's stylish. Maybe. Probably. Possibly. If you have complaints, just leave. 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 Following my words, both my husband and daughter criticized my mother-in-law. Overwhelmed by the continuous shocks, tears began to well up in my mother-in-law's eyes. Enough of this. House. Saying this, she pulled the suitcase she had taken on her trip and left our house. The eviction plan was a great success. I had thought that nothing would affect my mother-in-law more than a lecture from my husband due to her unusual passion for Joe, but I hadn't expected it to be this effective. Later, I contacted my in-laws and said, "If you want the June goods back, please pay for the past living expenses and the computer." Did I really throw the goods away? Of course not. That would be a crime, even if it's family. I just pretended to have thrown them away to break her spirit. In fact, all of my mother-in-law's personal belongings were hidden in my husband's room. Relieved, my mother-in-law immediately accepted my demands for Joe's sake. She transferred the money for the past living expenses and a new computer to our account. However, the money came from her husband's retirement funds, which were supposed to be saved for any future needs. Moreover, the money for the trip and her fan activities for Joe also came from those retirement funds. Originally, my father-in-law was bitter about my mother-in-law's uninvited stay at our house and furious about the reckless spending of his retirement funds. Naturally, they ended up divorcing after a huge fight. Since the family home originally belonged to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was kicked out, probably hoping to rely on us. My mother-in-law found herself without support after my husband declared he wouldn't take care of her. After such a flashy showdown with me, she resigned herself to her fate and didn't seek help. In the end, she moved in with her arranged sister, but was reportedly quite tormented by her nieces. Good riddance. Meanwhile, our household has become even livelier with our daughter starting elementary school. Lately, she's been learning to make sandwiches at school recreations, and she insists on serving her creations to us every day. So our dinners are full of sandwiches. Well, someday she'll make the best sandwiches for someone important to her, so for now, we're happy to be her practice subjects. My husband, who hadn't had much chance for recognition since changing jobs, finally last year, thanks to a review of the company's evaluation system, he was able to get a promotion. It's tough when you join a company from the good old days without a solid evaluation system. Hopefully, times will keep changing for the easier. Thanks to that, our lives have gained a bit more comfort. Well, we can't say it is very luxurious due to the high cost of living, but as long as my husband is here and my daughter, and we can eat together as a family, I think we're living a very happy life. What you consider happiness is up to the individual, right? Fortunately, I can keep working happily, and except for my weight, I don't have any health worries. When our daughter said, "I want to take care of a rescued cat," we went to a cat adoption event, and our family grew. Now it's 3 people and 3 pets living together. How could this life not be happy? These days, I think I'm living the happiest days compared to anyone.